I'm Geoff Simon, the Executive Director of the Western Dakota Energy Association.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us this week here on the Crude Life programming. And I love this time of year because we get to visit with individuals like yourself. And I remember visiting with Vicki Steiner every year, too, about your guys' annual meeting coming up. And I love the annual meetings because it kind of gives us a time to recap and then go ahead and use that information and look ahead at 2019 or the next year. So first of all, let's get some of the information on where and when, and just kind of some of those details on when is your guys' annual meeting coming up?
All right, our annual meeting is going to open at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, November 7th, and it runs through early afternoon on November 8th, Wednesday and Thursday, November 7th, 8th, and we are going to be at Four Bears Resort and Casino at Newtown.
Oh, great. That should be fun. I mean, so people, they've got the gambling there and everything?
Well, they do. If you choose to partake, you would have that opportunity, certainly.
Well, people coming in from out of town, you got to offer some different entertainment. I was going to ask you, did some of these cities ever bid on you guys like a Super Bowl? Because I know it's been in Dickinson and Williston, and, I know you guys try to hit a new town all the time. Do any of the economic developers or anything bid on you, or chambers bid on you guys like a Super Bowl?
Well, we don't exactly bid it. I mean, we just kind of try to do our best to move it around a little bit. We were at Watford City in 2016, Dickinson last year, and it was time to move north again. So we were looking for a location in the north, and the Four Bears facility is certainly large enough to accommodate us with a small trade show. We've got a few exhibitors lined up, and probably expect 100 or 125 folks to register for the meeting. Not large, but a good-sized crowd.
Yeah, but it's a crowd of experts. It's a crowd of veterans. It's a crowd of people that are in the industry, and quite honestly, representing some pretty big players out in the Bakken. I've been to, I think, 3 or 4 of the annual meetings, and so, you're talking about, a good number of, we'll call it a wealth of information. So one of the things that I really liked about your guys' annual meeting, it's the Western Dakota Energy Association?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, sometimes I get it, my acronyms mixed up. So is the presenters. Generally, you guys are offering some really good information, and then if you sometimes even got a panel of some of the oil companies, that sort of thing. Well, what do you guys got planned this year in terms of maybe some themes or some speakers of note?
Well, I don't know that we have a theme necessarily, but I tell you what, Jason, I am really pleased with the way the agenda came together. We've got, as you say, some pretty high-powered or influential folks in the industry. The event is a day and a half this year. It's the first time we've done that in a while, just to give time to all the different topics. And I'll just give you an opening of the first day here. We're going to start out talking about truck permitting issues, movement of oversized trucks, and there's a lot of them out there in the Bakken, of course. And there have been some issues with it, about whether you stay on the state highway or you get pushed off on the county road sometimes. So we'll have a little bit of a discussion about the issues that have surrounded the truck permitting system. We operate the system for the counties in the oil producing region, and we're now in the process of expanding that system statewide and making some significant enhancements to it. We're going to have a routable mapping system, so basically the trucking industry in western North Dakota and the entire state eventually will have what we call a Google Maps for trucks. Trucks can't necessarily go everywhere that a car can, but this mapping system is going to take them around some of those restricted areas, if it's a narrow bridge or that sort of thing. So that'll open the conference, and then the second half of the afternoon will be devoted to gas capture and some of the issues we've had with flaring. We're going to have a panel that includes folks from Oasis, One Oak, and Crestwood talking about some of their investments in the state. Substantial investments in pipeline and gas processing infrastructure have been happening. We'll also have, an update from Justin Kringstad from the North Dakota Pipeline Authority, looking forward to, what we're going to need in terms of pipeline capacity to address some of these issues. So that's kind of the afternoon. We'll conclude it with Brent Lonis, who's head of North Dakota operations for Hess Corporation, kind of giving a rundown on the latest research into leak detection technology to avoid and prevent some of the leaks, pipeline leaks that have unfortunately occurred. Technology can solve just about anything, and they're really looking at some promising new ideas.
The leak detection is very interesting because of the UAS industry, how those two are going to really work together. I'm not sure if that's going to be discussed at your guys' conference or not, but I know that's coming down the line, that sort of thing. Just marrying those two industries together so leak detection can be seen from the 5,000-foot view, so to speak. So I wrote down the truck permitting system and the gas capture. I wanted to ask you a couple follow-up questions on that. Of course, the trucks, they're extremely vital to the Bakken's economy, whether it's getting the liquids there or the liquids out of there. And, when I was out there in the western North Dakota, the muck roads were kind of making the news a little bit. They'd slide off, that sort of thing. Talk to me a little bit about some of those. Are those roads getting I guess redone? Some of those roads that could just slide off when it rains, that sort of thing. Was that in this study at all? I mean, because some of those roads were a little bit out of date. Does that make sense at all?
Well, a little bit, yeah. It's a challenge. I mean, you look at some of the counties out there. They're not just maintaining existing roads or improving existing roads. In a lot of cases, counties are still building roads, and the industry, in some cases, is contributing to that. In some cases, the industry has built its own roads to serve well pads. But it's an ongoing need for infrastructure. I've heard it kind of compared. When you look at eastern North Dakota, those are farm-to-market roads, and the construction of those roads occurred, in the early part of the 20th century. When the North Dakota economy was just getting rolling, from the days from statehood forward. But that never really happened in western North Dakota because there wasn't really a lot of cropland. So it was more rangeland for cattle and livestock and haying and that sort of thing. So you don't have a lot of those farm-to-market roads. That's really kind of the situation in parts of western North Dakota where the infrastructure is just now happening. Roads that provide access to some of the more remote parts of the area. So I guess if that's an answer to the question, I'm not sure. But
I actually think it's a fantastic answer, and it really, really explains a lot because you're right. The grain elevators and the 2-horse town type things, they had the roads set up back in the day. Whether it be from the wheel and buggy to the actual car, and a lot of those places out in western North Dakota. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember a few of those roads were compared to kind of some timber roads up in the Black Hills. I mean, it was, you needed a good 4-wheel drive to get to a lot of those places. But as, the Bakken is looking at a 20, 30, 40-year play, I could see where there's a very good case to say, hey, we need to have a road here for the next 40 years, so we got to put a little money into this. And where that just wasn't the case before because we just didn't have, it was all speculative oil and boom and busts and that type of thing. So very good answer. Very good answer.
It is kind of one of those untold stories. People don't realize how many new miles of roads have been built to service the oil industry to move this product to market.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament, too, to say that there's a lot of faith and a lot of evidence to say that this is an industry now. This is not like I said, a boom-bust type of a thing. No, this is an industry that's based on, an oil price. And if they're drilling 1 million barrels a day at $30, like they did during the downturn, they've got a few things figured out to at least keep the lifeline going during some of the downturn times. Gas capture. I wanted to ask you about, we know about the One Oak, and I think Oasis just opened their new plant yesterday. We've got a lot of the bigger companies that are doing some of the gas capture and the gas gathering. But are you guys getting into some of these science projects at all? Some of these new innovations, the ones that kind of show up to your well site and turn it into some kind of liquid gas right on site or whatever. I call them science projects. Justin Kringstead calls them like value added. He gives the real name for them. But, it's, are you guys getting into some of those ancillary type companies or that side of things? Or is it mostly going to be focused on some of the, larger percentage of the whole thing? Because, the bigger companies make up about 90% of that gas gathering. So.
Yeah, well, I certainly follow industry efforts to develop value-added projects, and recently before the Oil and Gas Research Council, they approved a study that will look into a potential storage of produced gas. Injecting it into sandstone formations. Just because we don't have the processing and takeaway capacity, the gas is just it's coming on faster than the industry can build infrastructure to deal with it. And we do have gas capture targets. It's going to ratchet up to 88% come November 1st. So, there are some concerns about that, whether it would, potentially cause some ratcheting back of the oil production just because we can't manage the gas. And those targets are not going to change. 88% is going to be the target from this point forward. So, we talk about maybe, more natural gas-fired generation, and there have obviously been projects looking into, using some of this natural gas to make fertilizer or plastics. The problem is, always with that, we're a long way from the market where it's going to be used, and that's really part of the issue here. But certainly, we're at 2.5 BCF per day. That's billion cubic feet of natural gas, and that is indeed a huge volume of natural gas, and that number is just going to continue to grow.
Well, that's why I ask about the value added, because this is really their time to shine. Whether, they got to beat their chest louder, they got to, fine tune oil profit, they're probably not going to use you. I mean, but if you can show that you're making a profit or breaking even at least, then they'll probably let your science project come and become a value added thing. So that's kind of why I bring it up, that I don't know. I look at it like it's really their time to shine, because, these gas gathering plants, some of them are a year out, 2 years out. It's not a quick fix. It's a long-term solution. And we're kind of in that area of quick fix. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The industry is open to any kind of innovation right now. If you've got an idea, the industry is going to listen. People don't necessarily know. We've got about 1.25 million barrels of oil being produced every day in North Dakota, but when you process that gas, we also have 400,000 barrels of natural gas liquids coming out of the Bakken too, and that's a good commodity. That's the building block of the plastics industry, the petrochemical industry. A lot of value being generated here. If we can, do that value added, if we can get to that next step, I think people would be thrilled with that.
Geoff Simon with the Western Dakota Energy Association, Executive Director, on the line with us. Couple questions left here. We'll get into the sponsors and some of the people supporting the annual meeting here in just a second. And that's kind of what we're talking about, using the annual meeting and kind of going out from there, talking about 2018, some of the things that they're looking at, and with the gas gathering, projecting out a little bit. But you do quite a bit when it comes to policy and government relations and that sort of thing. What are some of the key topics right now that the listening audience should keep an eye on? Say the top three oil and gas related policy and kind of from the political side of things. What should people, if they see a headline, what should they possibly click on the story to find out more, because it's going to impact the industry?
I tell you what, Jason, that's an ideal segue into day 2 of our conference, because our annual meeting, that's a lot of the political talk is going to come up on day 2. One of the biggest issues, probably the biggest issue with the industry right now, is workforce, because the industry can't grow, it can't function without people. So on day 2 of the conference, we're going to have a workforce panel We're going to have Daniel Stenberg from Mackenzie County Economic Development, and Watford City is going to be the curator of that. We'll have Paula Hickel, the job service manager from Williston, Pat Bertinoli from New Vera, he's their HR man, and then Dr. John Miller from Williston State, who's very familiar with all the technical training programs, process plant technology, those sorts of things that are provided by the community colleges in North Dakota. We also have an education funding panel, and that also plays into this. We got to have good students coming out of the high schools, but we got to have good schools to get good students. And then the morning concludes with an overview of what has been dubbed Operation Prairie Dog, and that is ongoing funding to support communities that are impacted by energy development, which is going to be paired with, actually, an infrastructure component to fund development in non-oil counties as well, kind of a package deal. And then the afternoon is going to talk about, kind of forward-looking, the industry and research projects, that sort of thing. And obviously we traditionally cap it off with Lynn Helm's overview of kind of where we're at, where we're headed.
The workforce, I think, is one of the more interesting parts about the Bakken, because I've gone on record saying I think Western North Dakota is going to end up being a melting pot for the area, because a lot of these jobs that are available, they're kind of specific, and you might need some sort of 2-year or a certification training, that sort of thing, whether it be something as simple as a CDL to maybe an artificial intelligence type of a certification. And so, it's not an easy, the old roughneck might not be qualified for, the new type of a well job is what I'm getting at. And so, the jobs aren't getting filled as fast as, a lot of people might think, when you got 20,000 jobs in North Dakota or whatever. So what I see is some people from either out of state or even out of country that are coming over and have those certifications and those specialized jobs, and are going to end up there and going to end up taking them out in North Dakota. Have you guys thought about that at all? About who's going to fill those jobs out in North Dakota? Are they going to be North Dakota people? Is it going to be people from outside the state? And maybe my prediction of a melting pot might happen. Have you guys thought about that at all when it comes to workforce?
Oh, you're absolutely right on. I mean, there aren't enough North Dakota people to fill the jobs. That's a big part of the recruitment process. Is maintaining the quality of life in our communities, and that's one of the things that our members stress all the time. If you're going to you're going to have to recruit people to come to North Dakota. I mean, we try to encourage youth and provide opportunity for the youth here, but we just don't have enough people to do the work. So recruiting people to come here is a big part of the task, and a big part of that is making sure our communities have a good quality of life. And a good quality of life sometimes requires a little bit of investment. That's part of my job, is promoting that, making sure that folks in North Dakota understand when you see communities like Williston or Watford City build a recreation center, that's not an extravagance, that's a necessity. Those types of facilities attract people, and that's part of the message that I try to deliver to folks all around North Dakota.
Well, that's a good transition into the prairie dog, which, and to me, it looks like it's a kind of a offshoot or a rebranding or a repackaging of the hub cities that was kind of the push last year. And talk to me a little bit about that when it comes to the state and Western North Dakota trying to get money to help with the quality of life, really, at the end of the day. And it's difficult because it doesn't have the population when it comes to votes and it comes to the state legislature and that sort of thing. So talk to me a little bit about that prairie dog and what's trying to be accomplished out there, and getting some resources and a little bit of help from the state so that this quality of life can be, at least some assistance can be brought out there.
Well, ongoing hub city funding is a part of the Operation Prairie Dog bill. That was actually just voted on in the Energy Development and Transmission Committee just yesterday, that they reaffirmed that continuing support will be coming to the hub cities, and that's essential because Williston, Dickinson, those communities took on a lot of debt before the funding was really there to address those needs. So they've got to service that debt. They need the income to maintain that quality of life. The bill itself is really kind of a package deal. It contains a revision to the gross production tax distribution formula. I don't need to get into that. It's pretty complicated with a lot of the buckets and that sort of thing. But the big part of the compromise, the package, is this infrastructure, two infrastructure buckets actually for the non-oil counties, and that will include actually some of the communities in the western North Dakota as well. Those that are outside the top 9 oil producing counties, but all these communities have said, hey, we've got needs too, and so that's going to be part of this package. There'll be a $150 million bucket that will be distributed among cities in North Dakota, and another $115 million bucket that will be distributed among counties and townships. Legislative leaders have said they want to get that out early in the legislative session before crossover, and that would be a wonderful thing. I think there's just a lot of support for the deal that came together.
I remember back in, I think it was 2014 or 2015, the Western Dakota Energy Association. Back then it had a different name, but the annual meeting in Dickinson. And I'll never forget, then Mayor Dennis Johnson, he got up in front of everybody and he said, Dickinson was debt-free last year. Now we got $100 million in debt. I mean, he was completely blown away how quickly the debt came on when, the energy industry came. And so I don't think a lot of people understand that, there was a significant amount of debt with a lot of cities that really never dealt with the debt because they balanced their books pretty well up until then. And so this was, like you say, necessity. That's what I'm getting at, is it's kind of a long way to say it was a necessity for a lot of these people. I mean, I remember when Dickinson couldn't put another house there because they just ran out of sewage space or water space. They had to get a new treatment plant done. And that's the way a lot of these communities were, is they just, in order to have more population, you got to provide them water and sewer and streets and police and everything else. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about sponsors and kind of who's involved with this year. Kind of helping you guys get this thing going. So, who's sponsoring the annual meeting this year?
Well, the unique thing about our sponsorship is it's kind of a win-win because the revenue from that is generated by sponsor dollars actually we put into a scholarship fund, and we are offering 5 $1,000 scholarships this year, based upon the sponsor revenue. The sponsors we have to this point, Dowa Solutions, which does our web service out of Williston. Jeff Zarling and his folks are going to be there. Vision West, Deb Nelson, and all the good work that they do with Vision West North Dakota is going to be there. Jeff Kummer and Mineral Tracker folks are going to have a booth as well. Mineral Tracker, I don't know if you know, is kind of a way for folks to keep track of the royalty payments and the deductions and that sort of thing. And they're offering that service to local governments as well. So Jeff Kummer is actually going to make a little bit of a presentation during our opening evening social. The Williston Basin, the Williston chapter of API is among the sponsors. AE2S Nexus, they've done a lot of the financial research for us. They're among the sponsors as well. One Oak is going to be represented. We'll also have Bros Engineering and the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute, the folks that kind of help us identify road needs out there. So pretty good diverse group of folks that you'll be able to talk to among the exhibitors at the event.
Yeah, and once again, the details for the date and the times and the location and everything.
The event is November 7th and 8th. We open at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, November 7th. We'll have a social that evening, but it's going to be at Four Bears Resort and Casino, which is just west of Newstown. You cross the Four Bears Bridge, and there you go. There's the Four Bear Event Center.
And it's a day and a half, so there's a opportunity for people to spend the night and do some networking after hours too, huh?
Absolutely, yeah. We do have discounted rates at Four Bears. Just tell them you're attending the Western North Dakota Energy Conference, and you'll get a discounted rate booking a room there for the evening of November 7th.
Yeah, and I'm not downplaying the annual meeting, but sometimes you can.
Sometimes you bet.
Yeah, it's been known to happen. You're right. So, Mr. Geoff Simon, anything that we forgot? Anything you want to reiterate? Anything like that? I'll kind of give you the final word and thoughts here as we kind of conclude. Go ahead.
Yes, one quick thing. We're going to open the day on Thursday with a recap of the election. These dates fall right after the November 6th election. So Shane Gettle with Odney is going to provide us an overview. Shane's a national committee man and very astute about politics. He's going to tell us what all happened on November 6th and what it means going forward.
Shane Gettle, former Commerce Commissioner, correct?
That's the man. You're right.
Yeah, well, his background, he'll be able to know how to integrate that in with the state and with the private and everything like that. So that'll be a good presentation.
Yeah, looking forward to his analysis.
All right. Well, that's all I got today, sir. Thank you much.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
You bet. Thanks a lot.